It was just a phone call, but her words cut deeper than silence. "Don't come for Christmas," she said. "We'll pretend we don't know you." I stood frozen, gift in hand, thinking about all the memories, the traditions, the warmth that used to define that day. But nothing prepares you for being erased. What they didn't expect was that this time I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't cry. I'd simply walk away, never look back. "My name is Dr. Lauren Ellis, and I was told not to come home for Christmas." The call came 3 days before Christmas. I had just gotten home from a long shift at the hospital, already exhausted but still smiling as I looked at the packed bag by my door. I had bought gifts for everyone, including the rosemary stuffing ingredients they always asked for, though they never remembered I was the one who made it. I even bought a new forest green sweater, soft, simple, festive, but not trying too hard. Just enough. And when my phone buzzed and I saw my younger brother Blake's name, I assumed he was calling to ask if I could bring extra napkins or coordinate carpooling like every other year. But instead, he said, "Hey, so listen, Savannah's coming to Christmas, right? She's really into energy, like how a room feels. And with your work, sometimes it can feel kind of heavy. I think for her sake, it might be better if you sat this one out. It's nothing personal," I didn't argue. Didn't ask what he meant by heavy. He didn't say, "You're a dedicated geriatric doctor who helps people die with dignity." No, just heavy, like a wet towel on his Instagram aesthetic. An hour later, my mom called. Her voice was soft, like a lullaby hiding a grenade. "We're just trying to make this easy for everyone. You know how sensitive she is? If you come, it could cause confusion. Honestly, we might not answer the door." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just not invited, I was unwanted. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I simply said, "Okay." Hung up and opened my banking app. Mortgage payment canceled. Car loan top-up frozen. Emergency maintenance fund law. I stopped being their silent backbone. No social media post, no message, just silence. And for the first time, that silence was mine. I used to think the way my family treated me was normal. Maybe I was just too serious, too focused, too much. Growing up, I was the oldest. The trial run, as my dad once joked at a barbecue, right before handing Blake the bigger slice of cake. Blake the golden boy, creative, charming, the miracle baby born after years of trying. I was just first. When Blake was 6, he drew all over the living room wall with a permanent marker. My parents called it expressive. When I broke a bowl while helping set the table, I was careless and told I needed to pay more attention. Blake came home from school with a participation ribbon once. It stayed on the fridge for a week. I brought home straight A's and they said, "That's nice," then slid the report card into a drawer. Once I even left my perfect GP a letter on the kitchen counter hoping someone would ask. No one did. When I got accepted to medical school first round, no gap year, no second tries, I printed the acceptance letter and showed it to my mom. She said, "Wow, that's intense. You'll have to be careful not to burn out." When Blake dropped out of college for the 3rd time to pursue creative direction, they threw him a re-entry party. Balloons, cake. A photo of him with a paintbrush now sits framed in the hallway like he cured cancer. They always said he was artsy, that he felt things deeply. I once found my sketchbook in the recycling bin under grocery store flyers. I asked. They said they thought it was scrap paper. But I kept going. I worked hard. I graduated early. I got licensed. I started treating elderly patients, people who had been dismissed, forgotten, left to decline alone. I gave them my time, my energy, my whole heart. At home, I gave just as quietly, fixed their plumbing, paid off a lingering home repair bill without being asked, lent Blake money when his freelance gig fell through, never asked for it back, never even mentioned it. But none of that mattered because in my family's eyes, Blake was the star. And I, despite everything, was just the one who always showed up, on time, and didn't complain until I didn't. There's a strange kind of pain in being the person everyone relies on, but no one really sees. That was me, the fixer, the helper. The one who quietly covered the cost of a new water heater when theirs broke down in February. The one who spotted the overdraft on my parents' account and transferred money before they even noticed. Who booked Blake's flight home for Thanksgiving last year When he said he was a little strapped after buying new camera equipment, and I never said no, not once. Not when my mom needed co-pays for her physical therapy. Not when Blake called me from the side of the road because his car battery had died again. I bought him a new one that week. It was useful, and I thought that meant I was valued. But I started noticing the pattern. The way my contributions were, invisible until they stopped. The way they forgot who had helped, but remembered who had made things uncomfortable. When I was there, I was too quiet, too serious, too intense. When I wasn't there, things were lighter, easier, more fun. Still, I kept helping. Out of love, I told myself. Out of obligation, maybe. Maybe just out of habit. But that night, after they told me not to come to Christmas, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage, it was realization. I opened my bank app and paused each recurring transfer. The $800 monthly top-up to their mortgage, gone. The rainy day account I kept for family emergencies, locked. The $1,200 Blake still owed me. I knew it would never come back, but I wouldn't let another cent go his way. They wouldn't feel it right away. That's the thing about being silently useful. It's only when the support disappears that people realize it was there at all. I didn't announce my withdrawal. I didn't post a passive-aggressive quote online. I didn't even tell my friends. I just let the silent sense settle in. And for the first time, it felt like peace. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone in my apartment with a mug of hot tea and a blanket that still smelled faintly like rosemary and fabric softener. I didn't open the gifts I had wrapped. I didn't light the tree. I didn't cry either. I just sat still. There was a strange power in not showing up where I wasn't wanted. But the day after Christmas, my phone buzzed. Not once, 3 times. My mother ignored, then a text. "Can you answer? You've done enough damage already." My stomach dropped. Then a new call. This time from my dad's sister. The only one in the family who still sent birthday cards with little notes in them. I answered. "What happened yesterday?" she asked softly. "They're saying you ruined Christmas, but you weren't even there." I blinked. "I ruined it." She hesitated. "Something happened with Blake's girlfriend, Savannah. She left early. There was yelling. Then your name came up." That was all she knew, but it was enough. Later that evening, Aunt Claire called again. She had pieced together more. Apparently, Savannah had seen a photo of me in their living room, just an old snapshot, probably from a birthday years ago, and she recognized me. "You saved my grandmother," she had said. "You're Dr. Lauren Ellis." The room, Claire said, went completely still. What followed wasn't clear, only that Savannah asked if I was the sister they talked about, and whatever she heard next made her quietly gather her things and leave. I didn't need the details. I could imagine it all too well. They probably joked. About me, as they always did, that I lived in hospitals, that I made things too serious, that I was hard to love. Maybe they even repeated that awful line Blake once said, "Lauren is basically death in a pantsuit." It wasn't new. This time, someone else had been listening. Someone who didn't grow up believing that cruelty was just how family speaks. Someone who remembered the doctor who stayed by her grandmother's side when every other physician had given up. Someone who saw me without being told how to see me first. That's how I ruined Christmas. By not being there to maintain the illusion. By not showing up to smile politely while they carved me into a cautionary tale. By being remembered unexpectedly for the good I had done for someone who wasn't them. 2 days passed before I got another call. This time it was from my mother. She didn't say hello. She just launched in her voice already tense. "I don't know what you said to her, but now your brother is a mess. Savannah blocked his number. Won't speak to him?" And she posted something online about being treated like garbage by the family of a woman she admires. There was a sound of glass clinking in the background. Maybe she was pacing in the kitchen. Maybe pouring herself a crisis glass of wine. Probably both. "She tagged your photo," she added sharply, like I'd committed a crime. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. Eventually, she reached the point. "We need you to speak to her. Just clarify that there was no bad intention, that she misunderstood, right? Because I was the family's PR department now. Damage control for the same people who had uninvited me from the dinner table." She's ruining your brother's future, my mom said. Quieter now. His name is being dragged in those art circles she's part of. All that stuff in New York. He's being blacklisted. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it was. They had spent decades trying to make me invisible. And now, the consequences of that invisibility were finally landing somewhere they cared about their image. I didn't respond. I just said I'll think about it. I didn't think about it. Instead, I opened Savannah's post. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even dramatic. It was just honest. She wrote about the doctor who had saved her grandmother, about walking into a family celebration hoping for warmth and instead hearing people joke about that same woman. She wrote how shocked she was that someone so kind and impactful could be so ridiculed by her own family. She didn't use names. She didn't have to. One line stood out. Some people hide cruelty behind polite smiles and holiday lights. But the moment I saw that photo, I remembered what real kindness looked like. And it wasn't anyone sitting at that table. It went viral in her circles. People were sharing it, commenting, tagging others. And for the first time, none of those voices were calling me difficult or heavy. They were saying I mattered. That same night, just before I went to bed, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail. Not from my mother, not from Blake, not even from my father, who only ever calls when he needs help resetting his email password. It was from Savannah. Her voice was quieter than I remembered from the one video Blake had sent weeks ago. Less airy, less polished, more real. Hi, I'm so sorry to reach out like this. I got your number from your aunt. I hope that's okay. I needed to say something. There was a pause, a long one. I didn't know, she said. I didn't really know who you were, but I recognized your photo. You treated my grandmother years ago. She still talks about you. She says you changed everything. You didn't give up on her when others did. You were kind. You were present. You made her feel like she mattered. Another pause. Her voice cracked slightly this time. I'm sorry about what happened and what was said about you. I had no idea. I couldn't sit there and pretend, so I left. That was it. I listened to it twice, then again, and I cried. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in years, someone saw me. Truly saw me. It's not through the filter of family expectations or decades of dismissal. Not through the lens of too serious or too intense. Not as a shadow standing behind the golden child. It's just as me. Savannah didn't ask for anything. She didn't suggest we reconnect or meet up for coffee. She didn't try to fix what she hadn't broken. She simply acknowledged the truth. And somehow that did more to heal me than 1,000 empty apologies from my own family ever could. 3 days later, a small package arrived in the mail. It was a letter handwritten on thick paper, ink smudged slightly in the corners. Inside, Savannah wrote more about her grandmother. How she still did yoga twice a week, still walked to the farmer's market, still told the story of the young doctor who looked her in the eye and said, "You're not done yet." She thanked me not, just for saving a life, but for showing her what real strength looked like. I framed the letter, hung it beside my desk, the same desk where I finished patient notes every evening. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to them, not to anyone. Just when I thought the dust had finally settled, my inbox lit up. Subject line, "Let's reset things." It was an email signed by all three of them, my mother, my father, and Blake. A united front, as if they were submitting. A group project. The tone was exactly what I expected from people who believed apologies were a form of negotiation. And they didn't say sorry, not directly. Instead, they acknowledged that emotions had run high, and that they regretted how things may have been perceived, which in plain English translates to, "We still think we're right, but we're afraid of the consequences." They suggested a family, brunch, neutral territory, open-hearted discussion, they called it, and then buried in the 4th paragraph, they mentioned it. They'd really appreciate it if I reached out to Savannah and asked her to take down her post. There it was. The real reason for the sudden olive branch. Branch wasn't a gesture of healing. It was a bargaining chip. An attempt to restore Blake's reputation in the art circles, Savannah moved in to clean up the mess they'd made, using me as the mop. I didn't respond. The next morning, the escalation began. My father called one of my hospital administrators, someone he'd met once at a charity event, and told him I had been acting emotionally unstable lately. Said he was concerned for my well-being, as he tried to gaslight my workplace to discredit me. Thankfully, the administrator called me right away, apologized, told me I had nothing to worry about. So, that bridge burned. Then came the group. Text to extended family, carefully crafted half-truths. No mention of me being excluded. No mention of the comments made behind my back. Just a whole lot of she's tearing the family apart and we're so worried about her mental state. 2 cousins I hadn't heard from in years reached out. So one offered me a yoga retreat voucher just in case you're going through something. Finally, the last move, the most desperate one. A visit. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard the knock. I peeked through the peephole. There they were, my parents, Blake. I opened the door, leaned against the frame, arms crossed. Just want to talk, my mom said gently. I didn't move because, by then, I finally understood something. They weren't here for me. They were here for the version of me that had always cleaned up their messes. And that version no longer lived here. They stood there for a while, waiting, hoping maybe that I would fold like I used to, that I'd invite them in, that I'd make it easy again, but I didn't. After a few moments of silence, I said no. Just that. No explanations, no anger, no performance. I closed the door, and I didn't feel guilty. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, sat at my desk, and looked at the letter from Savannah framed in a soft wooden border. It reminded me that the most meaningful recognition often comes from people who have nothing to gain, who simply see you because they've been paying attention. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn the love of a family that only ever measured me against a version of themselves they wanted to believe in. The golden child, the artist, the one who made them look good. But I wasn't created to make them feel comfortable. I was born to heal, to hold hands with people on the edge of goodbye, to listen when others turn away. And in doing that, I had made a difference. A real one. I didn't save lives for praise. I didn't cancel payments for revenge. I didn't walk away to prove a point. I walked away because I finally saw the truth. Once you see it, you can't unsee. There's power in silence, in choosing not to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. There's strength in setting boundaries and keeping them, in knowing that your worth doesn't need a family consensus to be real. As I filed my patient notes for the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. So, to anyone out there who's been made to feel like they're too much, too serious, too inconvenient, let me tell you this. You are not too much. You are not the problem. And you never needed to shrink to fit into someone else's story. Write your own. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been made to feel invisible by the people who were supposed to see you most, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Because sometimes the quietest stories carry the loudest truths. And sometimes not showing up is the most powerful thing you can do. There's something deeply painful about being rejected, not by strangers, but by the people whose blood runs through your veins. When my mother told me not to come home for Christmas, I didn't just lose a holiday, I lost an illusion. The illusion that family will always accept you, that love has no conditions, that no matter how far you drift, there will always be a seat for you at the table. That illusion shattered the moment she said, "We'll pretend we don't know you." At first, I thought it was a bad dream. I stared at the message, waiting for a just kidding or a we'll talk later. But nothing came. Just silence. A cold, deliberate silence that stung worse than any argument could. I had bought the gifts. I had made the plans. I even booked the ticket home. But none of it mattered. My presence was unwelcome. My love inconvenient, for days. I kept replaying the moment over and over, wondering what I did wrong, wondering how long they'd felt this way. The truth is, it wasn't sudden. It was the result of years of me growing into someone they didn't understand, someone who didn't. fit their mold. And instead of trying to know me, they chose to erase me. But here's what they didn't expect. They didn't expect that I wouldn't crumble, that I wouldn't beg for their approval, that instead of sitting in grief, I'd choose to stand. In self-worth, that I'd spend Christmas surrounded not by blood, but by people who chose me. People who made room for me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That night, I didn't cry under the weight of rejection. I lit a candle for peace. I cooked a simple meal wrapped in silence and serenity, not pain. Gave myself permission to celebrate the love I had within me, even if no one else showed up to see it. And slowly, something shifted. I realized family isn't always built by history. Sometimes it's built by healing. It's not about whose name is on your birth certificates. It's about who shows up when it matters. Who loves you without making you shrink to fit. Who hears your voice and says, you still belong. May have closed the door, but I found a new one. One that opened to warmth, kindness, a version of me that didn't need to be edited to feel worthy. So if you've ever been told you don't belong, believe this, you do. You belong in spaces where love isn't earned by silence, where your name isn't whispered with shame, where your soul is enough.